Welcome everyone to this City Council candidate conversation with the Chamber of Commerce. I'm thrilled to be with Gale Hobson, candidate for Ward 4. Gale, thanks for joining me today.
You're welcome and so pleased to be here. Thank you for having me. You, of course, and your business leaders and the citizens of Ward 4.
Our pleasure. Well, let's jump right into these questions.
Yes,
what do you
sir.
say?
I'm all for it.
So to begin with, what should the City Council do to boost economic development and quality job creation and retention?
Okay, well, that's a great question because that's exactly what we need to focus on because Scott, I'm a 40-year plus business owner. I owned a business back when women were not in business,
Sure.
But I've run a psychology practice, medical practice. It's not easy to manage. You manage staff and so forth, and I'm proud of that record. I've done it a long time. Plus, then worked for a corporation, Mercy Hospital, as medical director for behavioral health. So I have experience in that. I know that we have to grow as a city. We have to be progressive, and I'm that. I'm a doer. I believe in growth. Now, we have to do it reasonably, of course. We have to respect our citizens. And more than anything, as a psychologist, I know we have to listen. We have to be straightforward and honest in our interactions because that shows up. That is number one. We know two things go to the City Council. One is knowledge, which I believe I'm the one, especially about the homeless issue, I have that knowledge after setting up a continuum care program. But the most important thing we all can offer is our word.
Amen to that. Okay, well let's hit the next question.
Okay.
This is an issue that has been hotly discussed and debated. So, in the summer of 2020, our City Council voted to reduce 9 police positions. We currently are staffed at 162 officers, authorized at 171 officers, and the voters have twice approved the public safety sales tax to achieve a total of 189 officers. So how do you propose to get us to a fully staffed department as approved by the voters of the City of Norman?
Yeah, good question. I have met with Chief Foster. We've talked about that very issue. We've talked about how do you strike the balance of policing, which is so important. We all want to be safe in our community. I have a home here. I have an office here. I did have an office here before the pandemic.
Sure.
I've had multiple rentals, and I want them protected, and I want my business ability to go forward with that, to protect that. So that takes the police, that takes a strong force, and we need to be sure we fund that. Also, though, which can happen, is in addition, we need to have a crisis unit that's not armed so that, like a continuum of care program I did at Mercy, which protected patients, got them in the ER, didn't put them just back on the street, got them placed and treated and cared for, that reduces, you can catch by the research, 35% of that population, which are usually homeless, often mentally ill, and you catch them, get them up, get them in small housing, get them a business mentor who can talk to them about their writing checks and so forth, and you can get those off the street out here. Then you can deal with the hardcore, which we do have. We have another 10%, the police chief and I talked about it, that have gotten more dangerous. We have fewer actually than we did, fewer homeless on the streets, but they're more dangerous. So that, of course, causes the police to have to get involved, and we want to be sure they're fully funded to do that.
And we saw that just last week.
Yes,
sadly,
sir.
right?
We did. Yes, and that, by the way, and you know that's unusual for the mentally ill, but when you wrap that up into a dangerous population, you're often going to have the mentally ill be the victims, but you're going to have that dangerous population that affects all of us.
Right. Okay. So our next question. The council has discussed, and this is just fairly recently, but last year they discussed business registration fees, and even more recent, they are discussing utility connection fees, specifically water connection fees, and other fees on businesses. So what are your thoughts on these fees and your stance in general on business fees?
Okay. I am going to, as a business owner, when I first opened my practice here, and it was my 7-year practice, I had a multiple 40-year practice too, but when I opened it here, I found, and I had a situation that needed to be in front of the council, but it took me 7 times through. my daughter and I, to get that up and running. Now, we took the steps and we did what was right, and we kept going in front of the council and got it done. And I had a practice here, a business here. But it shouldn't be that complicated. It should not be that complicated, because you know better than anyone, we're not going to bring in the Costco's and the business owners if we make it so difficult that they're just going through all those steps. So we have to simplify. I see how that can work. I will work with the business community, with you and with others, to get that simplified, to find research programs and ways that we can help business come in. The Noun Hotel, of course, great example of making it too difficult to someone who wanted to put money into our community, and luckily is going to.
Specifically in Ward 4 in this case, right?
Specifically in Ward 4, why this position is so important. And it's important, Scott, and I have to bring it up, I hope I can here, that we need to walk in with someone ready, with information, with a background in business, with honesty. I've had a 40-year practice, and that's not easy to do. I've also been on the licensure board of psychology for chair twice. I know what it takes to be an ethical, honest person. And frankly, we've already had that happen, unfortunately, in the campaign, where someone else, Mr. Harrison, was not, he's been shown on video in an unethical, at least, probably illegal act. So I don't think the business folks here want to walk in to that problem, possibly that problem, where you may not even be able to be seated. So we don't want to walk in with that problem. And I think I'm the person to look at to take the lead there and help business forward, help our community forward, and protect our neighborhoods.
Okay. So many of today's jobs are not static. People have choices where they live or where they can work and raise a family. So what's your plan to provide a quality of life that is second to none so that Norman retains its current workforce and attracts new talent?
Well, that's a question that has a lot packed into a short time. But number one, no one can have the perfect answer. There's an old saying about that. If you fight for perfect, you're never going to get anything done. But you've got to fight for openness, responsibility, and for business coming in. So I think the number one thing to go into this with is be open and honest as business owners, and as just like I've run my business, but certainly on the city council and in those positions, so that the people learn to trust and say, well, if they make a decision I don't particularly like, I bet they're doing it with some research behind it. Sure. And knowledge. And that, to me, is number one. And then we can continue to grow, and we should. We're the third largest city in Oklahoma, as you know. We're the university town. We have every reason to be proud of Norman, Oklahoma. That's why I live here. I have children and grandchildren here. And I want them to see that we have leaders that are honest. We have leaders that step up, learn. If we don't know, you go learn, and you talk to people, and you converse. And then you make a logical, reasonable decision that's as fair as you can get to everyone. Okay.
So we've hit on some kind of hot topics, things that a lot of people are talking about. So this last question maybe address something we've already discussed, or it could be something totally new. But what do you believe is the biggest issue facing our community today, and what are your plans to address it?
Okay. Well, I think, of course, what I'm hearing about on the street, and I've been walking since the day I filed, so I have met lots of folks. I've been through not every street, but almost every street in Ward 4, and met some great people. I tell you, the experience has been more than positive for me. So I'm pleased. It makes me more excited about representing Ward 4. So, but I think it gets back to, again, there will always be decisions to make when you have the documents in front of you, just like last night on the city council, I watched that. They have to have the documents in front of them. Then you reason through that. But you know what's first is that trust is there. You know that person's going to look at the issue with honesty and straightforwardness. And I think that's just number one. It's been the number one in my psychology practice and dealing with patients and dealing with my colleagues, my staff. You know how it is when you run a business and you have payroll to meet. Right. If you're not honest, they're not going to trust you and really work hard for you.
Sure.
I think we have to represent that here in Norman. And you know, when I meet the kids on the street, I've got a couple of pictures of kids from OU and hugs and all the things they do. They say, we're looking to you. We're looking to you as the leaders, and we want honesty. And that was after that story hit, but they are, and we all can remember, Scott. I'm old enough, I know Mr. Harrison's old enough to remember Watergate. And the lesson of Watergate was so important. It was the crime, of course, but the cover-up became the real story. The denial, as he's done, denied it, then it's on video, the homeowner said, it's you, then I forgot, I didn't know, I was confused. All that is, people just look at it as excuses. We have to bring forward an honest, open presentation, and then if we disagree, okay, that's okay. We can disagree and say, hey, let's think about let's compromise.
Sure.
And I think compromise in my world is the name of the game.
So I'm curious, as you are knocking on these doors, are there some 1 or 2, 3 themes that you're hearing consistent messaging in Ward 4 that are the
Yes.
top issues that are bubbling to the top?
Absolutely. And homelessness, because I've been over, in fact, when we spoke before, I was over on Main, just north of Porter, or I'm sorry, it'd be east of Porter. On that street, there's several people there, and I put out 4 or 5 signs that day because people said, "Look, we've got a problem. We have homeless in our yards. We have, and I could see them. I talked to one with a basket, and talked to one man, an attorney, about how he deals with it. So that's a huge problem. And we do, along with April Heipel, who runs Food and Shelter, she's my treasurer, we have talked a lot about how can we find that balance, how can we set up a continuum of care, which will help with that. Right. And then there are other issues, of course. The stormwater is a huge one. I live on flood. I've been flooded.
Yeah.
So I want to deal with that. And we've got to find the finances through collected sales tax now and federal dollars to keep dealing with that. Infrastructure is a big one. And then allow business to bring in more sales tax. Costco would have, as you know, and others. So we've got to be business friendly while we're saying to neighbors, yeah, we'll do all we can to protect the integrity of our neighborhood. I love mine too. I live in an old 1928 bungalow. I love it. But I know that growth has got to happen.
Yeah, and to that point, to where you live, the Costco wouldn't be next door to you, it'd be somewhere else, but we all around town would be able to benefit from the sales tax that's generated from someplace like that.
And other businesses that we can,
absolutely.
with positive leadership, which you have and business has done here, we need to continue that.
We need a really diverse business climate here with not only things like that, but also uniquely Norman businesses that you're not going to find anywhere else.
Oh, because we have the university. Yeah. And so those of us who've run businesses and know you can't just say, oh, well, just make it happen. We know that it takes the nuts and bolts of going through what it takes to run a business, paying the payroll, being honest with your employees. We've got to do that and represent that as a city as well. Sure.
Well, as we wrap things up, is there anything else you'd like our membership to know before we close out this conversation?
Yes, I would. I'd like you to know, to your membership, that I'm a 40-year businesswoman. I've run a business. I know how that works. But mostly, I've been honest, and that's been very important to me as I've worked through my business. Because, for one thing, a psych business is a little hard to run because you're actually meeting the needs of people, but you have to pay the bills too. So I am uniquely qualified to handle that and to set up a continuum of care, work with the hospitals here, which I've already done. And the senior center, I'm chair of the senior center committee. And 3 years ago, when that was kind of stuck, I got that going at the request of the mayor then. And because I've compromised and have worked with people, we were in a meeting yesterday, and we're going to add to that. Now it's a very exciting situation that we can do, and we can make that whole piece of property over on Porter a health village, which will help with the homeless. It'll help all of us that are aging a little bit, not too much, but a little bit, and those of us who just want our children and grandchildren to stay here in Norman. I know Scott will want that. I want my children to stay here and be proud of Norman, proud of our university, and just do what's right.
Very good. Well, if anybody has questions or want to find out more about your campaign, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
I like them to call. I have a cell phone, 405-202-5557. That's my business phone, so it answers Dr. Hobson, but I always call it back, so please call. I also have a web page. There's a barcode on the mailed information that went into their mailboxes. This one, paid for by me several weeks ago, and then unfortunately taken out by others and dropped in theirs. That was not honest. So mine's paid for, but in here there's lots of information. And go to the webpage, Gale Hobson for Ward 4, and you'll be able to get lots of information.
Very good. Well, thanks so much for spending time with us today. We greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely, and thank you. It was a pleasure.
You bet. And thanks for you for tuning in to this City Council candidate conversation with the Chamber of Commerce. Continue to be informed, become an educated voter, and make sure you get out and cast your vote on February the 8th. Thanks so much.